The Silent Guardian, a story of hidden honor. Before we dive into this tale of silent courage and forgotten legends, tell me in the comments, have you ever encountered someone whose quiet presence commanded more respect than any words could? If stories like this resonate with your soul, hit that subscribe button and help us preserve these powerful memories. The morning mist still clung to the asphalt when Samuel Rodriguez pulled into the shooting range parking lot. 6:42 a.m., just like every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 8 years. His weathered Chevy pickup, a 98 with more miles than most people see in a lifetime, settled into the same spot near the far corner, away from the newer trucks with their oversized tires and bumper stickers proclaiming various allegiances. But here's what nobody knew about Samuel's morning routine, and what would soon change everything for a young Navy SEAL trainee named Marcus Chen. Samuel emerged from his truck with the deliberate movements of a man who measured every action. Faded Wrangler jeans that had been washed 1,000 times, a forest green flannel rolled to his elbows revealing forearms that spoke of decades of physical labor, and a Cleveland Browns cap that had seen better decades. No tactical gear, no military patches, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." Just a man who looked like he might fix your transmission or deliver your packages on time. And that's exactly what everyone assumed. Inside the range, Samuel signed the clipboard with his characteristic economy of motion. Rodriguez, in block letters, nothing more. The teenager behind the counter, busy scrolling through TikTok with earbuds dangling, barely glanced up. Another old-timer with time to kill and a pension to spend. Just another face in the endless parade of weekend warriors and retirees. But if that kid had looked closer, really looked, he might have noticed something peculiar about the man shuffling past. The way Samuel's eyes swept the room wasn't casual browsing. It was tactical assessment. Exit points, blind spots, potential threats, fields of fire. The way he carried his range bag wasn't the loose grip of a weekend warrior, but the controlled handling of someone who'd learned that carelessness kills. His footsteps fell in a rhythm that suggested muscle memory from formations and patrol movements. Most importantly, he might have noticed that Samuel never, ever, brought more ammunition than he intended to use. Lane 12. Always lane 12. The farthest from the building, where the morning shadows ran deepest and conversations ran quietest. Samuel unpacked his gear with ritualistic precision, one Springfield 1911, well-maintained but clearly decades old, one box of .45 ACP hollow points, exactly 30 rounds. And that thermos, dented, scratched, bearing a faded decal that nobody ever got close enough to read clearly. But today was different. Today, Marcus Chen was there. Marcus had arrived early, still riding the adrenaline high from completing his first phase of SEAL training. At 24, sharp as a blade and twice as confident, he'd claimed lane 10 with his buddies Tyler and Jake. They were loud, animated, full of the invincible swagger that comes with surviving Hell Week and living to tell about it. Their gear was pristine, their confidence bulletproof. What Marcus didn't know was that real legends don't announce themselves. They wait to be discovered. "Check out Grandpa over there," Tyler snickered, nodding toward Samuel's lane while adjusting his brand new tactical vest. "Bet he takes 10 minutes just to load that ancient cannon. Probably bought it at a pawn shop." Marcus glanced over dismissively, then stopped mid-laugh. Something caught his attention, not the man's appearance, but his stance. The grip, the breathing pattern, the way he aligned his body with mechanical precision. This wasn't someone playing soldier on the weekends. This was someone who'd learned these movements when mistakes meant death, when hesitation meant your brothers didn't come home. The first shot cracked through the air. Perfect center mass, a hole you could thread a needle through. Second shot. Same hole, slightly enlarged. Third shot. The paper barely trembled. And that's when Marcus realized he wasn't watching a retiree blow off steam. He was watching a master craftsman at work. But the real revelation came when Samuel reached for a fresh magazine. As his flannel sleeve rode up during the reload, Marcus caught a glimpse of faded ink on his forearm. Not a tattoo from some downtown parlor with flash art on the walls, this was something else entirely. Something that made Marcus's blood run cold with recognition and sent ice through his veins. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered, his own weapon suddenly feeling heavy in his hands. The numbers were barely visible, sun-faded and stretched with age like old photographs. But the insignia underneath? That was Marine Force Reconnaissance. The real deal. The elite of the elite. The guys who went where even SEALs feared to tread, into places that didn't exist on official maps. But it gets deeper than that, because what Marcus saw next would haunt him for years to come. Below the recon insignia, partially hidden by decades of sun damage and the natural stretching of aging skin, were letters so faded they were almost ghosts, SOG 67-74. Studies and Observations Group. Vietnam's most classified operations unit. The organization that didn't officially exist, conducting missions that were buried so deep they'd never see daylight. Men who disappeared into triple canopy jungle for months at a time, emerging with 1,000-yard stares and stories that died with them in unmarked graves or VA hospital beds. Marcus felt his hands trembling as he set down his own weapon. The scope of what he was seeing began to sink in. Around him, Tyler and Jake continued their banter, oblivious to the living legend standing 30 feet away. Casually punching holes in paper with the same precision he'd once used to eliminate threats in the darkness of Southeast Asian jungles. What would you do? Walk away and pretend you saw nothing? Or risk everything to approach a man whose very presence whispered of classified horrors and unsung heroism? Marcus chose courage over comfort. "Excuse me, sir," he said, stepping closer to Samuel's lane with the measured approach of someone who understood he might be walking into sacred ground. His voice carried the respectful tone drilled into every military man when addressing a potential superior. "That ink on your arm. Force recon." Samuel finished his string of fire, set the pistol down with careful precision that spoke of decades of ingrained safety protocols, and turned slowly. His eyes, pale blue, weathered by decades of sun and secrets, met Marcus's without emotion, without judgment, just quiet assessment. "Once," Samuel said. "One word. Final. Complete. A door that could open or remain forever closed." But Marcus pressed on, driven by something deeper than curiosity. Something that felt like destiny calling. SOG. And that's when everything in that moment changed forever. Samuel's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Not surprise, not anger, but something like recognition. The subtle acknowledgement that passes between predators who recognize their own kind. The look that says, "You know what that means, don't you?" Among other things, Samuel replied, his voice carrying the weight of classified operations and midnight extractions, of decisions made in split seconds that echoed through decades. The air between them grew thick with unspoken understanding. Around them, the range continued its normal rhythm, the crack of pistols, the rattle of brass hitting concrete, the casual conversation of people who'd never seen real combat. But Marcus felt like he'd stepped through a portal into a different world, one where real warriors carried their legends in silence, where the most dangerous men were often the quietest. But Samuel's next words would reveal a truth that would reshape everything Marcus thought he knew about heroism and sacrifice. "You swim fast, son." The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Marcus understood immediately. The water. The impossible extractions. The missions that happened when every other option had failed and men were left behind enemy lines with nothing but hope and the promise that someone would come for them, no matter what. "Fast enough, sir," Marcus answered, his voice barely above a whisper. Samuel nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. "Good. You'll need to. The water doesn't forgive hesitation." Before Marcus could ask what he meant, Samuel was methodically packing up his gear. 30 rounds fired, 30 impacts recorded, 0 time wasted on unnecessary conversation or ego-stroking. But as he zipped his range bag with the same careful attention he gave everything else, he paused. "Chen," he said, reading Marcus's name tape with eyes that missed nothing. "You ever hear of Operation Bright Light?" Marcus shook his head, suddenly feeling like a child in the presence of a master. "Good," Samuel replied, shouldering his bag. "Some things are better left forgotten. Some stories shouldn't be told." But as Samuel walked toward the exit, moving with the purposeful stride of a man who'd learned never to waste motion, he did something that would change Marcus's life forever. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a challenge coin. Not the shiny, mass-produced kind handed out at ceremonies and recruiting events. This was old, worn smooth by decades of handling, its edges rounded by countless moments of nervous fidgeting during long nights when sleep wouldn't come. On one side, the Force Recon emblem, barely visible from where. On the other, coordinates that led to a place that didn't exist on any map the public would ever see. "When you're ready to understand what we really do," Samuel said, pressing the coin into Marcus's palm with hands that were steady as stone, "you'll know where to find me." And then he was gone, leaving Marcus with more questions than answers and a piece of metal that somehow weighed heavier than any medal or commendation ever could. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He researched those coordinates, dove deep into declassified files that were mostly redacted black lines, and slowly pieced together fragments of truth from official denials and bureaucratic doublespeak. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about the war, about heroism, about the price of freedom. Samuel Rodriguez wasn't just a veteran. He was a ghost. A man whose missions were so classified they'd been erased from official records, whose very existence had been deemed too dangerous for history books. The kind of warrior who'd sacrificed not just his blood and his youth, but his very identity, for operations that history would never acknowledge and America would never thank him for. And now, he was hiding in plain sight at a suburban shooting range, carrying his secrets alone like stones in his pockets. The next week, Marcus returned to Lane 10, but his attention remained fixed on Lane 12. When Samuel arrived, same time, same routine, same quiet dignity, Marcus was ready with something different. Respect. Pure, unfiltered, bone-deep respect. Not the casual, "thank you for your service," that civilians offered like spare change at grocery stores. But the recognition that one warrior gives to another. The acknowledgement that some men carry darkness so others can sleep peacefully in the light. And in that moment of recognition, something beautiful and profound happened. Samuel's eyes softened just enough to let Marcus know he'd seen something real. Not hero worship, not morbid curiosity, but genuine understanding of what service really costs and why some debts can never be repaid. From that day forward, Lane 12 was never empty when Samuel arrived. Not crowded, not invaded by gawkers, but quietly attended. Watched over by men who finally understood they were in the presence of living history, breathing legend, walking testament to courage that most people couldn't comprehend. Because the greatest warriors don't demand recognition. They wait patiently for it to be earned through wisdom, respect, and the courage to look beyond the surface. Samuel never told war stories. Never shared classified details that could endanger ongoing operations or compromise old allies still working in shadows. Never broke the silence he'd maintained for 50 years of nightmares and guilt. But in his presence, younger warriors learned something that no training manual could teach. True strength doesn't announce itself with loud voices or chest beating. It simply exists, quietly confident, ready when called upon, and humble enough to let others take the credit for victories won in darkness. So I ask you, have you ever met a Samuel Rodriguez? Someone whose quiet dignity spoke louder than any boast. Someone who carried their service like a prayer instead of a badge. Share their story in the comments below. Because at Human Stories, we believe the most powerful legends are written in silence, carried in hearts, and honored through remembrance. If this story moved you, subscribe and help us keep these voices alive. The world needs to remember that heroes don't always wear their medals on their sleeves. Sometimes, they wear them in their souls, invisible to everyone except those wise enough to look. What Samuel taught Marcus in those quiet morning sessions would prove invaluable in ways neither man could imagine. But that's a story for another day. The Silent Guardian, Final Call to Action. You know what haunts me most about Samuel's story? It's not the classified missions or the faded tattoos. It's the realization that there are thousands of Samuels walking among us right now. Yesterday, I received a message from Sarah in Texas. She wrote, "My grandfather never talked about Korea. He just sat on his porch every evening, staring at nothing. After watching your video, I finally understand he wasn't staring at nothing. He was carrying everything." That's the power of these stories, isn't it? They don't just entertain us, they change how we see the world. How we see that quiet mechanic who fixes your car. That reserved security guard who nods politely. That elderly man feeding pigeons in the park. But here's what keeps me awake at night. We're losing these stories faster than we can find them. Every day, another Samuel takes his secrets to the grave. Another hero's sacrifice fades into forgotten history. Another family loses the chance to understand the giant who lived quietly among them. That's why I need your help. Not just your views or your likes, I need you to become a guardian of these stories. First, look around your own life. Who is your Samuel? That veteran neighbor who waves but never talks about his service? That grandfather who changes the subject when war movies come on? Share their name in the comments below. Don't tell their story, that's not ours to tell. Just honor their name. Let them know they're seen. Second, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because next week, I'm sharing the story of Elena Vasquez, a Navy nurse who saved 47 lives during Desert Storm, then came home to serve coffee at a truck stop for 30 years. Nobody knew. Nobody asked. Until one day, a young EMT noticed something extraordinary about how she handled a roadside accident. Third, share this video. Not for the algorithm, but because someone in your family, your workplace, your community needs to hear Samuel's story. They need to understand that heroism doesn't always come with parades and medals. Sometimes it comes with flannel shirts and morning routines. You see, Human Stories isn't just a YouTube channel. It's a movement. A rebellion against a world that's forgotten how to recognize real strength. How to honor quiet courage. Every notification you enable, every story you share, every comment you leave, it's not just engagement. It's a promise. A promise that Samuel's sacrifice won't be forgotten. That Elena's service will be remembered. That the next time you see someone moving with that quiet confidence, that careful precision, you'll look a little closer. Because somewhere out there, right now, there's a young Marcus Chen who needs to learn what real warriors look like. There's a Samuel Rodriguez who's been carrying his stories alone for 50 years, wondering if anyone cares anymore. They do care. We care. And we're going to prove it. So hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Share this story. And keep your eyes open. Because the most powerful stories don't shout for attention. They wait patiently to be discovered by those wise enough to look. I'm your host at Human Stories, and I'll see you next week when we uncover another legend hiding in plain sight. Until then, remember, heroes are everywhere. You just have to know how to see them.